Madison.
Hey Courtney, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, just working.
Amazing. So today we are talking to somebody actually in our anthropology family tree. I love when we go back in our lineage. So he technically is our anthropological great grandfather, technically, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So today we are talking to Bill Leonard, the infamous editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Human Biology, who was the advisor of Josh Snodgrass, who was the advisor of Tara Stepan Robbins, who is the advisor of me. And Madison, what about you? What's the lineage?
So my master's advisor is Aaron Blackwell, who was kind of co-advised by Dr. Josh Snodgrass as well. And then I think Dr. Bill Leonard would be the advisorial great-grandfather.
I love it. Keeping it in the family. So, of course, many of us here know Bill very well, but Dr. Leonard is the Watkins Family Professor of Global Health at Northwestern University. He's done extensive research on aspects of human energy metabolism, nutritional health, and child growth. And of course, he is our favorite editor in chief of AJHB. Let's welcome him in. Well, hello. How are you? It's so great to see you.
Great to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to talk about the journal.
Absolutely, of course. So, to just dive right in here, what types of manuscripts does AJHB accept? And are there specific formats such as an original review or a commentary or a data report that is accepted?
Yeah, Courtney, that's a great question. In the American Journal of Human Biology, we publish a variety of different article types. And each of these article types is sort of flagged up in the submission portal. So when you are submitting a paper, one of the first things that you do is you select from the drop-down menu as to what type of article you want to submit. I would say the majority of articles that are submitted to the journal are original research articles. Those are basic data papers where you're presenting the results of a new study. Typically, we like to see lengthwise those at 6,000 words or less, although there's some flexibility on that. So we have original research articles. Then if you're sort of presenting something that is sort of a larger review of the literature, we have review articles. Those are often a little bit longer, but the format is basically the same. That is, you've got the title page. Abstracts are typically a structured abstract where you're going through and presenting intro, methods, results, and conclusions. And then you're structuring the paper, as you would a standard research paper with the references collected at the end. In addition to then the original research articles and reviews, we also have short reports. These are very focused, perhaps preliminary findings of a research project. Word limit on these is 1,500 words with a limit of 15 references. Structure-wise, very much the same as an original research article where you've got an abstract, the body of the text, and the references. Some of the other shorter contributions are commentaries. This is something that we started up a few years ago. Commentaries are basically an opportunity for members of our community to perhaps talk about an emerging research area in human biology, or as you'll soon be seeing with our 50th anniversary special issue, where I've asked authors of some of the highest impact papers in the journal's history to provide us with an update, a commentary on what has happened in that area of research since their paper was published. And I'm really excited about those. We've got about 15 of them that will be published later this year. Commentaries they're up to 1,500 words, and they typically do not have an abstract. Another shorter contribution to the journal are letters to the editor. These are opportunities then, if you see something that has been published in the journal and you want to sort of comment on it briefly, letters to the editors are another option. Letters are relatively short, up to 750 words, And the other thing about letters to the editor is if you are commenting on someone's original paper, the authors of that paper then are given the opportunity to respond. So it can be kind of a back and forth format. Again, 750 words are the limit there. Another important component and a widely cited component of our literature are what are called toolkit papers or methods papers. This was started over back in 2012, and this was really the brainchild of Peter Ellison, then editor, as an opportunity to sort of showcase and highlight new and emerging methods, both qualitative and quantitative, field and laboratory, in human biology. These papers are by invitation only. Our toolkit editor is Gillian Bentley of Durham University. So if you have an idea about an interesting novel methods paper, reach out to me and Gillian to talk about this as a potential toolkit paper. The other nice part of toolkit papers is they are made free to read after they're published, and all of the toolkit papers are published in a separate section of the AJHB homepage. So if you want to take a look on the homepage, we have the entire list of all of the toolkit papers that have been published since 2012. The last category of papers are special issue articles. So when somebody proposes and we agree to create a special issue for the journal, then that special issue is flagged up in the submission portal. And so when you are submitting, if a contributor to a special issue is then submitting their paper, the article type that they select is special issue article. And then later down in the drop-down menu, they also select which of the special issues this paper is being contributed to. Currently, we have 5 special issues that are in the works. Most of them will be posted later this year.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to the 50th anniversary publication. I'll be checking that one out. For our next question, we wanted to know what kinds of topics or research areas are most commonly published in the AJHB, and are there any emerging themes that you're hoping to see more of?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the journal publishes articles ranging in the entire scope of human biology. So everything from growth and development, anthropometry, to energetics, immune function, reproductive ecology, anthropological genetics, and demography, sort of the domain of classic human biology. In terms of emerging themes, the other areas that I see ever more papers being published on and that I'm encouraging submissions on are in issues of health disparities. That is, using the lens of human biological variation to really unpack social, ethnic, racial disparities in health outcomes, both domestically and globally. We're also increasingly seeing more papers on epigenetics and developmental origins. Again, sort of using the human biology lens to really begin to understand how early life influences developmentally and epigenetically are impacting longer outcomes. As I was highlighting with the toolkit papers, we're always interested in novel methodologies that are being used and adapted for research in human biology. The other area where I think we're seeing increasing numbers of papers are those that are touching on the impacts of climate change on human biological variation. That is, looking at how climatic variables are being reflected in adaptability to heat stress, variation in food availability, sort of food insecurity and water insecurity. And so those are themes, and we've actually had a couple of special issues that have really tackled those kinds of elements. So those are all, I would say, some of the really important themes that we see as being ever more important for the journal.
Those are all very incredible and impactful topics. And you said epigenetics, you're speaking my language.
Indeed.
So, this idea of publishing when you are a student or even an early career researcher is so exciting, but it's also really scary. So, does AJHB see a lot of student or early career submissions? And then also, what advice would you have for a first-time author who maybe is a little nervous to submit something?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I personally, and the journal more broadly, I mean, we really encourage contributions by students and early career researchers. I mean, speaking from the perspective of our own graduate program here at Northwestern, I mean, it's something that our program is very strongly committed to and supportive of. That is, graduate school being, as I like to sort of talk about it, as an apprenticeship. And so, as with anything in life, the more practice you have with something, the better you are at doing it. And so during graduate school, beginning to present your work at meetings and beginning to develop and write research papers for publications, those are things that we very, very strongly encourage. I mean, in terms of advice, I think we, particularly in the human biology community, the senior scholars, sort of recognize how daunting publishing your first paper, submitting your first paper can be. And I think the pieces of advice that I have, especially for the first couple of times through, is, you want to make sure that you're using your academic mentors, your, major professors, and your colleagues as a sounding board. Showing them your paper as you're developing drafts become really important. In terms of tailoring your paper to the American Journal of Human Biology or any journal, make sure that you consult the guide to authors. So before submitting, take a look at the guide to authors for the journal to make sure that your paper is conforming to the expectations. The other thing that I would also add in closing is, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me with those questions. I'm happy to provide guidance and address any key issues that you might have.
Great. So I think along the same vein, we wanted to know, what are the common reasons that manuscripts can be rejected or sent back for major revisions?
Yeah, it's a really terrific question, Madison. On initial submission, what I do as the editor is, the first thing that I look at is this paper appropriate for the AJHB, and has it been put together in a manner that is consistent with the guidelines of our journal? And so, oftentimes I will get a paper that is just, it's not really a fit for the AJHB, or in other cases, it hasn't been really put together in a coherent professional manner. Those are, at the front end, reasons for what we refer to as a desk rejection, where I, as editor, just say, either this is not appropriate or it's not up to professionally put together standards, and I will reject it without sending it out for review. In terms of, once a paper goes out for review, in the majority of cases, I would say the decisions that come back are some variation of revise and resubmit, either major revisions or minor revisions. It is not uncommon, especially early in one's career, when people are going to be less familiar with your work, for even a strong paper to come back with a lot of comments and perhaps major revisions. You should not be disheartened by that. One of the things that I hear often from our authors is how appreciative they are of the reviewers for our journal in providing thoughtful and detailed commentary. And so looking at the reviewers' comments and taking them as constructively as possible is always my suggestion. And I think in our human biology community, we're really lucky in that most of our reviewers and colleagues are very thoughtful in providing positive and constructive comments and criticism. That being said, there are always cases where you're sometimes going to get comments back from a reviewer that may be seem a little nasty and a little snarky. My recommendation always is, in revising a paper, always take a direct and positive tone. What we require with revisions in the journal is that you provide us with a point-by-point commentary on how each of the reviewer's comments has been addressed. Even if the reviewer has not taken the high road, I always encourage people to take the high road in their revisions. It's going to lead to a better place. The other thing that I should point out that's important to keep in mind about revisions, you may well think that a comment of a reviewer is off base or they've misunderstood something. If that's the case, it's completely fine to explain that in your revision and in your comments back to me. General rule of thumb then with revisions is the easier that you make it for the reviewer and me as editor to understand how you've addressed those concerns, the easier the review process is going to be and the more straightforward it's going to be in terms of moving it to the next level.
Sometimes taking the high road is very difficult though. And so what I always do is when I get those reviewer comments, I read them in my mind in a cartoon voice. So I think if Mickey or Minnie Mouse was saying this, would it really be that offensive? And honestly, sometimes it still is, but that's definitely great advice to take the high road. But, you did mention something that really stood out to me. And that was, if a reviewer makes a comment that maybe you don't necessarily agree with. And I love AJHB's point system, the bullet point system where you are, asked to address everything. So how would somebody go about kind of rejecting a reviewer's comment to them?
I mean, you can do it very directly. So in many cases, keep in mind that reviewers, so like all of us, are juggling many, many things. And so it's often the case that in reading through the paper, a reviewer will have misunderstood a point or just be off base. And so as constructively and as gently as possible saying, you're number 2, thank you for your commentary. I believe that you may have understood the main point here, and then go on to sort of explicate why you view their comment as being incorrect. And it might also be an opportunity for you in the text to sort of clarify a point that maybe it was a point that was made, but could have been fleshed out in greater detail. And so it might be an opportunity then to modify or amplify your text without changing the main assertion that you're making in your analysis or in your write-up. If that makes sense.
All right. Now, does the AGHB encourage interdisciplinary work or collaborations between biological anthropology or human biology and other fields?
We do. And I really see the AJHB as a venue for interdisciplinary work. I mean, human biology as a discipline has always been inter or transdisciplinary. And so there's a lot of engagement with other disciplines, including biological anthropology, evolutionary biology, evolutionary ecology. As you can see from many of the papers that are published in our journal, we also interact with, and receive papers from disciplines such as nutrition, exercise science, sports medicine, genetics, demography, and public health. And so one of the things that I'm always mindful of as editor is, I want the American Journal of Human Biology to be publishing the best work possible. And I see us as being sort of a big tent for human biology research broadly defined. That being said, if we have a nutritionist or an exercise scientist who has work that is relevant to our field, I'm mindful that in presenting their work for the American Journal of Human Biology, that paper is going to look a little different than if a nutritionist writes it for the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, or an exercise scientist writes it for a sports medicine journal, underscoring that, the goal of our field is to understand sort of human biological diversity and health. And so bringing people together under that banner to sort of frame interdisciplinary work to address those questions is, I think, what we're all about.
So I know when we all submit a paper, we wonder who our reviewer is going to be and what is the timeline going to look like. And so would you be able to first just kind of walk us through the general timeline? What can somebody expect when they hit that submit button? And then also kind of note, who are these reviewers? Are they grad students? Are they professionals in the field? Who is making that judgment call?
That's a great question. And so when a manuscript is initially submitted, as I was speaking about a moment ago, first thing that I do as editor is decide, is this right for us? Is this, a well-constructed manuscript? If the answer is yes, then my next decision is, okay, do I send this out for review myself as editor? Is this in my areas of expertise? Or are there one of our 5 associate editors who are going to be better suited to find reviewers? And so I will either, in many cases, it's in my wheelhouse, I will send it out for review. Alternatively, if it's, in areas like genetics or maternal reproductive health or exercise science, I will send it to one of my associate editors, and they will be charged with sending it out for review. Typically, for the American Journal of Human Biology, we make decisions based on 2 reviews. And these reviewers are often members of our editorial board. So we have a wide and diverse list of editorial board members who really span the entire waterfront of interest in human biology. So they are many times go-to reviewers for papers in the journal. The other thing that you can do when you're submitting a paper is recommend reviewers that the manuscript be sent to. And also, if there are people who you think might have a conflict of interest or have a particular negative bias towards your research, you can flag up, a couple of people who you would prefer the manuscript not be sent to. I take those recommendations to heart and often use them in terms of finding reviewers. Once 2 reviews have been gotten on a manuscript, papers come back to me. If they've been sent to an associate editor, typically the associate editor will write a recommendation, and then I will send the manuscript back to the authors with the commentary from the reviewers and my overall recommendation on what should be done next, major, minor revisions, what kind of changes need to be made. In terms of timing, for those manuscripts that are sent out for review, the median time for first decision is a little over a month, about 35, 36 days. So that gives you a sense of sort of what the median timetable is for responses. I will say that, I mean, there are lots of journals out there and there's lots of pressure on time. And so one of the other things that I'm very mindful of with reviewers is, if someone is past the designated time for getting their review in, I will send them a little reminder and ask them for, an updated timetable on when we can expect their review.
I'm sure many graduate students appreciate your commitment to transparency about the timeline, given that we are often constrained by our own timelines as well. So I appreciate that very much. We wanted to ask if there were any special issues, calls for papers, or specific sections that you wanted to highlight that are relevant to students and early career researchers.
Yeah, again, another terrific question. And I should flag up that it is not unusual for senior graduate students to put together special issues. So just within the last couple of years, we have, a year ago, Alex Niklu and Malika Sarma, we published their special issue on the now and future of human biology at the extremes, which came out of the 2022 plenary session. Both Malika and Alex were senior graduate students at Notre Dame at the time they put that session together. Likewise, in the hopper right now, we have Kyle Wiley and Carly Cheney's forthcoming special issue on urban human biology and health, which stems from the 2023 plenary session that they did. Both of them are now PhD in hand, but when they were putting that together, they were graduate students as well. So in as much as you all are doing and sort of bringing new dimensions to the field of human biology, I'm always interested in hearing from particularly senior graduate students and postdocs about potential special issues. What is hot, what is emerging, and very, very much open to that. Special issues, I will say, have been really an important part of the American Journal of Human Biology since its inception. Papers in special issues are often some of the most widely cited papers in our journal. And so I'm actively recruiting contributions to special issues. The other piece that I should mention at this point is, starting this year, we have changed how we handle special issues. So as of the new year, we moved fully to what's called continuous publishing with the journal, something that is a transition that has been made across most all of Wiley's journals. What this means is that, and the upside of continuous publishing is that papers, once they're accepted, no longer sit around in early view. They are immediately put into an issue. The way that this works is immediately being put into an issue applies to those papers that are also part of a special issue. So as we're now accepting individual papers for, Kyle and Carly's special issue, the 50th anniversary special issue, those will individually be published in monthly issues. Once most or all of the papers for a special issue are together, they will be published en masse as a virtual special issue that will be flagged under the special issue section on the homepage of the journal. And so it's a little bit different format, but I think it's still a nice way to highlight and showcase emerging and important topics in human biology, while at the same time finessing the problem that historically had existed with special issues. that the people who got their papers in first were sort of penalized because their paper was sitting around in early view until everybody else's paper got published. We've now sort of finessed that. And it also is nice in as much as it gives us multiple opportunities to send out social media about papers once they're initially published in a monthly issue, and then when the entire special issue is ready to go.
And you know how much I love all our social media.
Well, and Courtney, I'm so grateful to you for all the work that you do as our social media editor. It really is.
Oh,
It really is important, and it really does make a great difference.
you're gonna make me all emotional. And we're talking about publishing, which is scary, but thank you. You're very generous. And it's always a pleasure to work with you with the social media posts. So my final question for you is kind of a loaded one. So it may be a little difficult to answer, but if you had to give someone one piece of advice as far as how to get something published in AJHB, what would it be?
What it would be is, well, I mean, I guess there are two dimensions to this. To not be afraid to send your best work to the journal and make sure in putting together your work to reach out to your faculty mentors and to reach out to me if you have questions or would like sort of comments or thoughts about the paper. I am here, your mentors, and really human biology is a community. We are here to support you. One of the things that I've always appreciated about the Human Biology Association and our world is I think we are a very collegial and supportive environment, that we want to encourage continued growth of our field and training of talented young scholars like the two of you. And so we are here to provide resources. And so availing yourselves of the help and support that our community provides is, I think, the final recommendation that I would have.